At the beginning of the story, in the world. With its differences, it turns out that magic has flourished. This magic has helped those in need, and it is also not easy to learn or master. In a world that develops over time, magic is just slowly fading away. Today, the boy named Ian was a grown-up. The mother was planning to throw her son a party. Ian didn't want to do anything, just to simply get through this day. Dad was only a memory. Ian pictured him getting ready to go to school wearing fangs. He and his mother wanted Ian to invite friends from the science room for the party, but Ian was hesitant to call because he wasn't even there before. On the sidelines, Ian was making breakfast before going to school to save his brother Barley's toys. The mother said she was very upset when she touched Barley's board game. Despite the warning, Ian, because of the scattered toys, decided to save them after he tripped. That's when Barley drew something strange, and it started moving. Because Ian didn't like that, he asked Barley to stop. Barley ran out of the house, and when Ian let go of the trash, he met Bronco, their mom's boyfriend, outside. There are people in this town, and every time you take down places for the old ones, Ian said, I think I must be babysitting Barley, because Barley is incomprehensible. They were also playing a video on his phone. That said, Barley was not allowed to destroy the ancient water shelf wreck. The ancient warriors who will bear great responsibilities. The video invited them to come drink at the water stand. After that, Mom, who was also angry about the mess, said, you're invited to come inside. In fact, Barley was a fool for fantasy games and loved to learn about things from the old days in his major games. Before, Ian was upset because everything was going awkward on his birthday. And this is why Barley doesn't stay still. Ian also thought of his dad's spirit, afraid of getting dirty. Ian said of his father to Barley, because memories were only two. He wasn't sure about Dad, but Barley said, there were 3 things I remembered about our father. He had a gutsy beard, drummed his feet, and then sauntered. While the 2 brothers were talking, Barley's bracelets slipped and slowly fell. So Mom gave Barley and Ian a stern look, and Ian was persuaded to pull himself together after the fall. Ian was so disturbed that he even left home without breakfast. Later, at a shop, a man said, look at the Fangs shirt. Ian was thought to have been linked to Blooder College, but when someone mentioned Dad, saying, it's a vest. The man asked if it was a, by then chase. It was confusing again. Dad and that man used to be college friends. That was when Ian heard the news that his dad had died long ago. He'd been quite upset because people said, Dad was so good. Because Ian was also a confident person, when he imagined Dad coming into the room, they all said they were aware he was going to try to bring him back. And Ian's dad went to college every day in his memory. The most quirky guy, who wore purple socks. When someone said he was famous, Ian was in love with the idea. That's why they talked about it in class. We used to want to be a little cop, like Dad, Ian thought. Ian, who had never heard much about that stuff, wanted to ask more about his father again. Because that man had to send his son to school, Ian said goodbye to the memory. On his 16th birthday, Ian said, I made the decision to fully adopt my desire to be as brave as my father. After that, Ian decided to start doing daredevil things, but it didn't work out because it was his first try. That's why Ian spilled some party stuff in class for his birthday party. His friends decided to follow suit. Just then, Barley came in with wild energy, and Ian picked up his friends in the car. It was then that Ian wiped his hands off his face in a frantic mood. The ink on his hand was smudging his cheek, so Ian got moody about everything, and then his birthday party was cancelled. He stopped telling his friends. On his way home, Ian said, I'm depressed now. He was scraping his plans back with a pen. After that, Ian took a sticky tape and repeatedly listened to it, an audio file of his father. And liked it. And Ian was looking at his father's picture, saying, sarcasm, as if it stuck with him, and vice versa. While Ian stitches back his father's memory, Mom came to sit beside Ian. Ian, when he was his age, wondered what his father would have been like. Confidence. He asked if there was any. When my father was a young man. Ian wanted to understand for himself. Mom explained that several things had happened. Ian, of course, would have liked to have seen Dad, and he wished Mom could see him too. But when Dad was very ill, Ian wanted to see him so badly. Because he was no less strong. Mom explained to Ian. After this, Mom made him split the cake, but then Ian said, I'll give you a gift now, for fear of waiting too long. That was a gift from Dad. Something Ian was told to open when both he and Barley were 16. It was then that Ian and Barley opened it. Inside, they saw a magic staff. Barley kept saying Dad was a magician, but Mom said, my father was an accountant. Since Dad got sick, Barley started doing weird things, showing his growing interest in magic. That's when they found a letter on the balcony. A letter Dad had written for Ian and Barley. In the letter, Dad had written about magic and said, we were looking forward to leaving a little magic in your lives. Dad had also written a spell for his 2 sons. That spell was the visitation spell, and if cast correctly, it would bring him back for exactly 1 day. Ian said they could call him back, so Barley suggested using the Phoenix Gem and the magic staff. They tried to bring Dad back, but both brothers were left heartbroken when it didn't work as they thought. Only Dad's lower half appeared. While Mom was showing her 2 sons' strength, she said, this gift is from your dad, proof of how much he wanted to reach his sons. It was then that Barley, after Mom left, read the spell on the paper aloud. Just then, the Phoenix Gem glowed with color, and because Ian was showing his power, he started reciting the spell to the end. Voices filled the room, and Barley came in. When they looked, gradually, from the staff, Dad's lower half appeared. But Ian couldn't finish it alone. When Barley came in and helped, the Phoenix Gem burst with energy. After such events, Ian and Barley, with magic powers out of themselves, tried to bring Dad back fully, but they only brought one part, because the spell didn't have enough power yet. Ian kept bumping into stuff, overwhelmed, not hearing what they were saying. That's why he went near Dad's shoes with Barley. The next thing they saw was Dad's legs moving. They tapped Ian and Barley's feet. Ian stayed because his father was partially there, but his mind was confused. But Barley said, Dad's spell will last 1 day. When the sun goes down tomorrow, he disappears again. He explained it could never be called again after that. To bring Dad back fully for the day, they decided to find another Phoenix Gem. Barley had been looking for where to find it from his cards. It was then that Barley said, Manticore's Tavern might have it, run by a stout warrior. The man there said he knew where to find rare jewels, even though Ian didn't believe it at first. Barley convinced him this time. So Ian and Barley brought Dad's legs along, setting out to find the Phoenix Gem. For Barley, it was mainly about showing Dad his van, while Ian wanted different things with Dad, unlike Barley. After this, when Mom found out, she knew her sons went after the Phoenix Gem for their dad. She followed from behind. In the car, Ian and his brother Barley trained with the magic staff using Barley's guidance. But it was awkward, so Ian stumbled in the next attempt. It was then that they reached Manticore's Tavern. Barley said to go in with his lead. When they looked inside, it wasn't what they thought. It was a restaurant now. Ian felt out of place, but Barley, despite the hunt for the real Manticore, saw a busy figure in the kitchen. Because Barley was as determined as ever, the real map was what he passionately asked for. Ian and Barley showed their father's half-body, explaining they needed the Phoenix Gem. But the Manticore argued she could no longer do jobs that sent her on risky adventures. Because the Manticore said she couldn't provide that map, Ian, too, wanted to see his dad he never met. It felt forced. The Manticore said, we don't want to do that because every time something happens, it could still be dangerous if we just give people more of what's risky. Then, as we chatted back and forth, Ian said, the Manticore remembered her old life, and she did. The entire restaurant venue was blown up by lights and destroyed. So the Manticore unleashed her wild side too, breathing fire and destroying everything she saw. The map also got burned down because of the Phoenix Gem's chaos. That's why Barley called out to Dad and Ian, then ran away. The bottom part of Dad was left stumbling. Just then, the fiery chaos around Dad's legs was about to collapse. Ian, too, grabbed the staff and chanted the spell, determined to keep the magic alive. After that, even though they managed to get out of the burning area, the difficulty was that they didn't have a map anymore. But then, Barley sketched out the Manticore's map onto a menu sheet. Because he was able to bring it, they'd be able to get there by tomorrow morning. The fastest way. They decided to go via the freeway. Mom, on the other hand, said, I left to go to the Manticore's Tavern where my 2 sons went. She called the police with her friend, using her U-Cat pole, and told them indoors. After that, Mom said, I saw the burning Manticore's Tavern, and there was a wild figure. The Manticore, who sat a little further away, was also joined by 2 little sprites. She was told that the adventure was opening to find the Phoenix Gem. The Manticore said not to worry and that the map had been mentioned because of the Phoenix Gem, but the Manticore forgot to tell the 2 boys about the curse. That's why the Manticore, too, knew Ian and Barley were going to be in big trouble. She said she could help. Ian's mom also called the Manticore out with the cops, then got into the car to rescue her sons. On this side, Ian said, because there were so many things I wanted to do with my father, I kept falling in love with the idea of him, but I couldn't do it all in one day. Ian was telling Barley it was out of time. Despite wishing his father and mother could see him again, Barley, too, at least said about Dad, Mom's new man, I've been saying I won't see you for hundreds of days. That's because the big van suddenly stopped. Barley checked the car because they didn't have much time. Ian, too, tried to take the magic staff and test the growth spell. But the growth spell, if you want something to grow, requires focus on that object. He was trying to see it clearly, but missed. After that, the oil bottle didn't grow big because the spell failed. Barley ended up shrinking instead. This is what happened next. Ian carried tiny Barley, with Dad's legs, to the gas station. Meanwhile, Ian's mother called the Manticore. She asked about the curse that might happen to her sons. The Manticore told her about the guardian curse, explaining that if Ian and Barley took the Phoenix gem, the curse would come to life. If the curse came to life, in the form of a great creature, Ian and Barley would have to face it. The Manticore explained that the curse destroyer must come from a magic sword, but she had sold it to pay off debts. Now, after finding that sword again, she vowed she'd go and save them. On this side, Ian and Barley began to fight angry little sprites, so they refueled and quickly drove off. Barley couldn't drive anymore, so Ian drove by himself on the road. But the motorcycles and the little sprites kept fighting back too much. Barley hit the car to stop the fight. Ian lost his focus too, trying to get out of this chaos. He floored the car and sped away. Ian's driving energy felt familiar, they escaped the sprites. Barley slowly grew back to normal size. Back in their car, police cars kept coming after the bridge. And Ian, who didn't have a license, didn't know what to do. But they dared to swerve the car to the side of the road. Just when they didn't know what to do, Dad's legs walked out of the back. The police were about to arrest them, but with a sudden spell, Sheriff Barron was knocked back in confusion. It wasn't long before the sprites regrouped. Ian answered their threats with distractions, so they wouldn't catch on. Right around there, Colt Bronco showed up. Ian's mom's boyfriend. On the grounds that he was teaching Ian to drive, he lied to the cops. The police murmured, but Colt himself had already noticed. A police officer said, the big boy is with Barley, because Colt said he could handle it. It was like a clever lie, and then the magic came to light. Because of that, the two brothers, Ian and Barley, evaded the police officers and jumped into the car. Ian was running back up. When he noticed footsteps, he realized a police officer, Spectral, Sparta, was close. He started contacting Colt Bronco. By then, Barley was quiet, and then he said himself, I was upset because I thought it was over. When the two brothers were in a bad mood, it could have been easier, but Barley said, stop going from the damaged road to a dead end. On the other hand, Mom, Laurel, was hunting for the sword, which had been sold to her and the Manticore. The Manticore said that if she couldn't take that sword, Laurel's sons would be in trouble. Afterward, even though Laurel found the Manticore's sword again, she was angry because the shopkeeper was extorting money. That's when she got a call from Colt Bronco, who said the officers reported her two sons were last seen in the north. Then there were Laurel and the Manticore, who wanted the sword, but the Manticore said the shopkeeper hadn't paid up. She had thrown it away a while ago with its scorpion poison. So Laurel and the Manticore returned to the car, pleased they could bring the sword. On the other side, they found Barley's van stalled at the entrance to the Path of Peril. After that, Barley and Ian were going from the Path of Peril to the top of the mountain. The road was very rough, and somewhere, it led to an endless pit. Barley and Ian decided to cross the road using the ancient bridge to Raven's Point. But the button to lower the bridge was on the other side. Ian thought to do it with magic. After that, Ian used the levitation spell, but it only reached 15 meters and didn't work out well. That's why Ian believed there was an invisible bridge. He forced himself to recite the spell again. But Ian didn't dare to step out, so Barley wrapped a rope and a rock around it, tying it to Ian's waist. Even though Ian started to fall, Barley helped pull him back. Not only that, but whenever Ian took another step, he walked on because he believed the bridge was there. But since the rope around Ian's waist was stretched full, Barley was worried too. He was pushing through his fear, thinking Ian was just holding the rope and walking across the gap. But when Ian suddenly looked back, he saw there was no bridge left. He'd magically lost it in the spell and started to fall. Luckily, just as Ian was about to drop, they reached the shore and lowered the bridge in time to cross. Barley, meanwhile, figured out where to go and started following the statue of a raven on the bridge. Just then, Colt Bronco arrived and tried to bring them back. But Barley told the story of seeing Dad again, only if they could do it before sunset. Ian said, "We're taking Dad and Barley in the van, then heading to the rock front." That's when they got a call from Colt Bronco, who was facing a number of police cars. But because the way Ian came was blocked, they were trapped and about to get arrested. Barley said, "Even though I wanted to push the rock down the mountain, Ian's spell didn't work." So Barley started the van and said, the road was closed by the fallen rocks. After that, Barley and Ian followed what Dad's clues called out, and the ravens pointed the way. They came to the place where the last raven pointed, following the end of the stream. After that, Barley urged Ian to use the spell again, handing him a little piece of encouragement. That's why Ian, Barley, and Dad's legs sat up near the river, drifting together until they stopped. On the other hand, it was Laurel, who crashed into the side of the road because she was thinking of joining the Manticore's mission. Barley and Ian were talking about Dad when they were swept up in the ride. Barley still had a memory with Dad and was very emotional. Ian was on his way to say goodbye to Dad, but Dad was missing his upper half, only his legs and form remained. Barley didn't go in then, he was so scared. What came out of it was a decision to live without fear. He and Ian arrived in a cave, going over traps and dodging a gelatinous cube. That was followed by the two of them, who had come across as adventurous. They saw a hole. When they opened it, they realized they had just come home. Back to their town. This is why the brothers argued then. Ian, too, felt his dreams were destroyed, and he went to Barley, angry. After that, Ian sat down on the hill with his father's legs, just the two of them, and spent a lot of time thinking. Barley had been looking for a solution so far, hoping to see his father fully. Ian, sitting still, thought back because of Dad's presence and said, all his life, he found that he had fulfilled what he wanted to do with his father. Meanwhile, Barley climbed onto the fountain ledge and went to retrieve the Phoenix gem. But then the Phoenix gem's curse came to life. A large creature made from building pieces became a dragon, and it went after Barley, who took the gem, blowing fire and chaos with its might. But the Manticore arrived, wielding the sword. On one hand, Ian was bringing Dad back briefly before joining Barley. The Manticore came and stabbed the harassing monster herself, but before the sun was about to go down, Ian started fighting with magic to stop the dragon. The monster sharpened its strength. The magic staff fell into the water. The dragon also reached for the Phoenix gem in Barley's hands, but then, using the wooden staff that Ian was planting at hand, he got it back because the magic was released again. And thanks to Mom's collaboration with the Manticore, they distracted the monster. After that, when everything was done, Ian was watching from between the rocks, trapped with Dad's legs. Dad was fully there at last, and Barley spoke with him. As the sun went down, Dad disappeared again. Because everything was over, Barley turned to Ian. Barley, meanwhile, went on to say that Dad was proud of raising a man like Ian. And said, Dad told me he gave me a gift to share with you. That's why Barley, too, stood in for Dad and began to comfort Ian. So Ian told his friends about his magic. And got closer with them. It wasn't until Mom walked in with her friend, the Manticore, that Barley and Ian, with a new van, applied magic and opened up a new adventure. Oh yes, we are. We'll be presenting interesting stories in the coming days as well, so please follow our little channel and look forward to it. Thank you all so much for watching till the end. You guys are the best.